How much is an emergency fund? So today we're going to talk about what an emergency fund is, figuring out how much you should save in your emergency fund, the importance of having an emergency fund. Should you pay off your debt first or save for your emergency fund? And how do you start saving for your emergency fund? So first I'll introduce myself. My name is Nia. I'll be your Chief Learning Officer for this course. I'm a published author, certified financial education instructor, and public speaker. I am the founder of Perspectives. I take individuals from struggling and stress to empowered about their money so that they can achieve financial independence. I started Perspectives really to educate individuals and teach them how to create ways to introduce personal finance concepts to their children. Now in 2020, my mission is to make money a part of the conversation. So what is an emergency fund? To be honest, it's your saving grace. It's your safe haven. It's a money lesson that you wish you were taught when you were younger. I mean, we all did, right? So an emergency fund, the definition is a specific amount of money that's set to the side for a rainy day. Now, this money is only touched for an emergency. And I mean, well, that's why it's called emergency fund. And it's separate from your other savings. So you have additional savings. It's not mixed in with your emergency fund because the emergency fund is a do not touch fund. Okay. It's only if you have a serious emergency. So how much should you put in your emergency fund? Well, it's based on the salary that you have coming in because your bills is based on your salary. So your bills are based on your salary. So most experts suggest 4 to 6 months of salary should be in your emergency fund. If you want to be more on the conservative side, I suggest the 6 months. And that way you're prepared. So in the case that you should lose your job, become unemployed, maybe you might become sick or ill and have to be off work for a period of time, then you are prepared. And I know that sounds like, oh, we hear that all the time. I personally used to be a mail carrier at the Postal Service and I hurt my ankle. I ended up being intermittently off work for 2 years. I had 2 boots, 2 casts, and then they finally decided that I needed surgery. So I ended up having to have surgery, then have personal training. I mean, not personal training, physical therapy, and then work conditioning. I mean, and you might say, oh, well, I was injured at work, so it might be covered at work. But there were periods where it wasn't. And I had to go through the necessary paperwork and things like that. So it's helpful to have an emergency fund during a time like that so that you're not worried. You're already trying to recover from a serious injury. Having to scratch and scrape for funds might make that an even more stressful situation. So it helps you be prepared for things like that and instances like that. And your emergency fund can also be your seed money for investments. Savings can jumpstart your investments if you want to start investing into the stock market and things like that. While you're learning how to invest, then you would save money to prepare. So once you feel knowledgeable and you're ready to jump in, you have a fund already there to start that process. So why is an emergency fund important? Well, if a financial emergency happened to you right now, how would you pay for it? Now, whether you have an emergency fund now or not, your answer to that question shows the importance of it. If you have one, you can go, whew, I know that I have one, so I'm good. But if you don't have one, now that's presented the situation for you. What am I going to do? So it basically not having an emergency fund makes it you're unable to provide that real security. You're literally just one step away from poverty because that means it only takes one serious unexpected expense to completely derail your finances. You know, living paycheck to paycheck is already tiring and frustrating. You're constantly on that hamster wheel, you know, waiting to the next paycheck. And a lot of times you're without funds during that period because your bills might have consumed your paycheck. So now you're just deadlocked, you know, or you're scraping money or you're having to borrow money. And all of those things come to play when you don't have an emergency fund. So an emergency fund will help you reach your goals. It'll help you take a a look at your finances and decide where you're at and decide where you want to be. It helps to provide a better life for your children because you are more aware of your money and know what's going on. It promotes a less stressful environment. If your car breaks down today, it's already stressful enough that you have to deal with it, figure out, where am I going to get it towed to? How much is this going to cost me? Because you have no clue how much the expense will cost. You're literally at the mercy of the mechanic, waiting on them to tell you what it is, what you need to fix it, and how long it's going to be before you get your car back. Why add more stress to that in trying to figure out, well, where's the money going to come from? If you really think about it, most individuals don't have $1,000 saved up. So they're pretty much not prepared for an emergency. So the next question that my students ask me this question all the time: debt versus emergency fund. Should they pay off debt first or should they work on their emergency fund? Well, I say both. And here's why. Like, I know it sounds cliche, but like Scar sung in The Lion King, you got to be prepared. Okay. I tell people to do both because one simple expense can throw your finances off. So for example, say you're working to pay off your debt and you're paying your credit cards down and you're gaining momentum and you feel like you're making headway and that debt that you owe number is knocking down completely. Well, now you have an unexpected expense. Guess what? You're going to have to go charge back on those credit cards that you just paid down, that you were just celebrating were down, in order for you to pay for that unexpected expense because you didn't put any money to the side for saving. Trust me, I'm telling you from experience. So when you don't save for an emergency fund, it can throw your finances completely off. So that's why you need to do both. You set aside a certain amount of money for debt and a certain amount of money that still goes to your emergency fund. Otherwise, you're going to end up in a position where you take 2 steps forwards, but then now you have 10 steps back. So now you got to work to pay that money off the credit card again to get back where you were. The only constant is change. So you know that there is no way for you to predict what's going to happen in life, no way for you to predict what money you will need for. You don't know what emergency might arise, so why not be prepared for it? So how do you save for an emergency fund? Well, you set a specific and realistic goal that pertains to you and what you want. Is like I say, it's based on your salary. Once you've completed your budget, you have to decide what your next steps are and put a plan into action. And that just basically means once you've completed your budget, you'll either have a surplus or a deficit. And we discussed that in the budget class. You basically decide from there how much money out of your surplus can go towards your emergency fund. So that's one of the first things you got to do. You got to decide what the exact amount is that you need to save towards. Once you complete your budget, maybe you might have to go back and make some strategic decisions and see where you can afford to make adjustments so that you can reach your financial goals. At the end of the day, it's a compromise. You know, your child will see you working. They see you working every day. They see you going to work and you're working hard and you're missing out on things and you're not treating yourself and you're neglecting yourself and you're still only making enough. An emergency fund is your first step in the right direction. You know, working just to pay bills is not what life is about. So you have to work towards those goals. If you don't work towards them, they're really not going to happen by mistake. Okay, you have to actively work towards them. So ways that you can save: you can work on eating out less coffee runs, work on your spending and see where you spend the most, maybe impulse spending and things like that. So you want to work on those type of things. You want to see, can you cut down your cell phone bill? A lot of people are at home a lot right now, so maybe they might not be using their cell phone service as much. They might have it connected to the internet all of the time. Look into your electricity. Unplug big appliances, other than your refrigerator, of course. But unplug big appliances if you're not going to be home. If you're going to be gone all day, or maybe you're going over, for a road trip. A lot of people are taking road trips now. Why is your computer, your children's game systems, all of those things plugged in? Anytime it's plugged in, whether the device is turned on or not, it's pulling electricity. If you have a thermometer, program your thermometer so that it is timed. So those are a few ways that you can start saving up for your emergency fund. And that's the end of the lesson. So now you know how much you should put in your emergency fund.